The University of Texas men just became the 2025 NCAA swimming and diving champions. This is a massive bounce back for the Longhorns after they finished in 7th last year. It also marks the second consecutive title for head coach Bob Bowman. He won a team title with ASU last year and now won another one with Texas. It's obviously a massive group effort in order to win this title. That's why it's the team title. And along the way, Texas won many key races in order to secure their victory. In total, Texas won 1 relay and 6 individual events, with 3 of those individual wins coming from one man, Hubert Kos. Not only did Kos win the most events for the Longhorns, he was the only triple event winner of the entire meet, scoring the maximum 60 out of 60 points. Let's take a look at the insane meet that Hubert Kos had in his first year as a Longhorn. Back in 2024, swimming as a sophomore for Arizona State, Kos entered the meet as the top seed in all 3 of his individual events, the 200 IM, the 100 back, and the 200 back. But he added time in all of his events, placing 3rd, 4th, and 2nd. Not a bad performance by any metrics, but likely a little disappointing to go home without any titles after entering the meet with the top times in 3 events. However, in between the 2024 and 2025 seasons, something interesting happened. Hubert Kos became an Olympic champion. At the 2024 Paris Olympics in the 200 backstroke, Kos had a massive charge on the last 50, making up over a 1-second deficit and winning gold. Kos would return to NCAA competition for the 2025 season, now as a Texas Longhorn as he transferred to follow his coach Bowman, and now also as an Olympic champion. At the 2025 SEC Championships, Kos was slower than he was at the previous year's Pac-12 Championships. Was this a sign that he was better positioning himself for a standout NCAA performance, or a sign that he wouldn't be as impactful as he was the year before? We would find out soon enough in his first event, the 200 IM. During the prelims, he led a stacked field in this event, going a 138.89, which was just a couple of tenths off of his lifetime best to claim the #1 seed. The true test for Hubert Kos would come in the final, as he'd have to take on defending NCAA champion and Cal 5th year Destin Lasco. The first of many battles between these two as they share the exact same event lineup. On the first 50, Kos established an early lead with a butterfly leg of 20.52. He was one of only 2 swimmers under 21 seconds. Kos matched that speed on the backstroke as well. His 24.27 split was a 10th faster than Lasco as he turned in a 44.79, the only swimmer under 45 seconds at the half. During the breaststroke leg, the leaders, Kos, McDonald, and Lasco, began to lose some ground to the more breaststroke inclined IM swimmers. Kos was still quick enough and had a big enough lead to still have a large lead over the rest of the field at the 150, and most importantly, that lead over Lasco. And he would need every bit of it, as Lasco turned on the jets for the final 50. During the final turn, it looks like he was gonna catch Kos, but Kos managed to just hang on at the very end to win his first ever NCAA title. With a time of 137.91, Kos ties Lasco from last year's NCAAs to become the second fastest swimmer in history, with both of them only behind Leon Marchand. Looking at the splits between Lasco and Kos in this race, we can see how it really came down to the wire. These swimmers' advantages over one another are mirrors of each other. Kos opens up a big lead on the first 50, then slightly extends it on the second. After that, Lasco makes up a small amount on the third 50 before making up a huge amount of ground on that final 50. Lasco's closing 50 maybe makes it look like Kos completely died on the end of the race. He was outsplit 23.35 to 24.17. But it's worth noting that that's just more showing how insane that closing speed really was for Lasco, because Kos' split here was faster than every other swimmer in the field not named Destin Lasco. With the tone set in his first individual race, expectations were now sky high for Hubert Kos in his backstroke events. So how would he fare there? In the prelims of the 100 back, Kos grabbed the #2 seed behind Florida sophomore Johnny Marshall, as these two swimmers are separated by just 2 100ths. That's a pretty close margin. I bet we won't see that again. On the first 50 of the finals race, Marshall stormed out to an early lead, 20.70, while Kos was in third with a 20.99. And at the 75, Marshall still had the lead as Kos moved to the second position. But on the final 25, Kos closed the gap underwater and slowly pulled ahead, winning the race at the touch at the last second, 43-20 to 43-22, just 2/100ths. That's also a new NCAA record, as both swimmers actually dip under Luca Orlando's old record of 43-35. Looking at the splits between Kos, Marshall, and Orlando's record, we can see just how critical that final 50 was for Kos. Of these three swims, Kos was actually the slowest on the way out, with Orlando and Marshall being 20.7s on the first 50. But then on the final 50, Kos let it rip. His second 50 split of 22-21 made the difference back up and allowed him to get that 200th edge on Marshall. Hubert Kos is now 2 for 2 at these championships. Time for one more. Kos's final event would be the 200 backstroke, the event where he's won world titles and Olympic gold in the long course pool. But he'd have to get through the reigning NCAA champion and record holder, none other than Destin Lasco. And after these two qualified first and second in the prelims, just like in the 200 IM, they would be right next to each other in the final. At the 50, it was actually Marshall who was leading the field from the outside lane, as is to be expected from the more sprint-oriented swimmer. But Kos was right there with him, just 800s behind, 21.96 to 22.04. Over the next 50, Kos took the lead, as him and Marshall were the only swimmers under 47 seconds at the half. While Marshall suddenly got a lot slower on the next 50 as that opening speed caught up with him, Kos didn't. In fact, he got faster with a 23.99 split, and into the 150 turn, he had opened up a massive lead over the rest of the field. A lead that Hubert Kos would only extend over the final 50 as he continued to leave everyone else in the dust as he crushed the field and the NCAA record with a blazing 134.21. He takes over a second off of the former NCAA record of 135.37 set by Destin Lasco last year. That swim from Lasco last year was monumental, as it took down Ryan Murphy's long-standing NCAA record in the event from 2016, and now Kos has blown by it. Looking at the splits between Lasco's former record and Kos's 134, we can see how they differ. The first thing that jumps out is just how similar the second 100s are between these two swims. Lasco is 1/10th faster on the third 50 and Kos 100th faster on the final 50. This obviously means that most of Kos's work was done on that first 100. The first 50 in particular is ridiculous. Kos opens up a lead of almost 8/10ths here before extending it on the second 50. In its entirety, we can see why this swim from Hubert Kos is so fast. He has the opening speeds to go out with a swimmer with as much raw speed as Johnny Marshall, but then also has the back half to hang with an elite closer like Lasco. 134 anything in the 200 backstroke is obviously stupid fast, let alone 134 low, but Kos is actually hoping to be a bit faster here. If you couldn't tell from his reaction after the race, Kos stated in post-race interviews that his goal here was actually to swim a 133, which is just hard to imagine. Compared to last year's NCAAs, Hubert Kos is like a brand new swimmer, not only going best times by some pretty large margins, but also going those times when it mattered most. So what changed? The first thing is that Bowman and Kos got better at handling that transition from conference to NCAAs. In a post-meet interview, Bowman explained that last year at Pac-12s, he had Kos ready to go really fast, and he did, but then he had a hard time hanging on at NCAAs. This year, they dialed back his prep for SECs in order to fully prime him for when it mattered, and it paid off. Bowman also touches on another big factor, the fact that now Kos is an Olympic champion. He described how Kos used to get kind of nervous before big meets, but after executing such a good swim on the biggest possible stage, it's no longer an issue. As the only triple event winner, it's pretty easy to put Hubert Kos as a swimmer of the meet for the men's side, even more so when he breaks 2 NCAA records. I'm excited to see what exactly Kos can do in long course this summer. Is he due for a big drop after all these improvements in yards, or is yards times just catching up to where he's already been at in long course? What did you think about Kos's swims at this year's NCAAs, and will he break 134 next year? Let me know down below.